Over the weekend, the Carolina Hurricanes extended their captain, Jordan Staal, for 4 more years, and there's looking like there could potentially be a trade on the horizon for the Hurricanes. We will talk about all that in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Andrew Schnittker. How are you doing on this Monday morning, Andrew?
I'm doing great. We are in the thick of it now. We are less than a week. The draft is this week. We are less than a week from the opening of free agency. Silly season is here.
Yes, it is. And the thing that a lot of folks are talking about is the fact that the Carolina Hurricanes have finally inked their captain, Jordan Staal, to a new extension. This comes after, his 10-year one finally came to an end. And, we talked about this on Friday, Saturday, of the two parties being a ways away on an extension. Stahl's camp had given the Hurricanes multiple options, but finally, they got something done. It was 4 years with a 2.9 AAV for the first 3 years, along with a full no movement clause. And then in the final year of it, he goes down to 775,000, and he can be moved with that. It is a pretty team friendly deal. We figure, salary wise, that's kind of in the ballpark we figured, kind of where we'd be looking at with that. So the thing that surprised us most was the term. We were kind of thinking, maybe 2, 3 years, potentially, just a one as well. But they just did 4 years. And I feel like, especially with the way the final year of this deal is set up, that was the way, that was the thing that they were having issues with, of the Hurricanes were wanting this amount of term, Stahl's camp was wanting this, and I feel that that's where the compromise was made on that final year, where the Hurricanes were going to almost the league minimum for salary, and then the no movement clause is done on that one as well. I feel like that was where the compromise was made.
Well, and I think, it's not a big surprise that this got done relatively quickly. We knew both sides wanted this. And look, NHL agents know how to use the media to help get things done.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that's what happened here. All it really took was for us to record a podcast segment about it that same day. But, the term did surprise me at first. But you look at it, it's not a 35-plus contract. Jordan Staal is still only 34. So that means, say Jordan Staal retires before the contract is up, there's no cap penalty to the Hurricanes. The contract basically just goes away. So, in essence, they gave Jordan Staal a lifetime contract to ensure that he retires a Hurricane. I think that's what everybody wanted. I think that's what he wants. He wants to be here. He wants to try to win here. His family wants to be here in the community. And I think as of right now, that 2.9 million number is a really good number for the Hurricanes with Jordan Staal. That's a little less than half of what he was making on his previous deal. He's still one of the very best shutdown centers in the NHL. You look at what the Hurricanes do night in, night out in terms of lining him up against the opposition's best players when you have the chance. You look at the New Jersey series in the second round, the way that he really just made Jack Hughes a non-factor in the games at PNC. I mean, I said this on Twitter. I'm paying $2.9 million for that every day of the week and twice on Sundays. I mean, easily. I mean, he still brings some secondary scoring. Still, I mean, but you can argue between him and Jacob Slavin, the key guy on that Hurricanes penalty kill that's been among the best in the league. He played over 2 minutes a game shorthanded last year. So, yes, he's 34, but Jordan Staal still brings a ton to the table right now. I think in the here and now, if you just get the Jordan Staal you got last year, I think 2.9 million is a bargain. And even if as the deal goes along, he keeps playing, he drops off a bit, his role reduces, he becomes more of a third line center. It's not the end of the world because the cap should start going back up again. So 2.9 is never really going to be an egregious number for Jordan Staal.
Yeah, and also, yeah, I think you meant to say fourth line center there because he already is the third line center.
Yeah, if he drops to the fourth line.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not a bad deal as well. I was talking to my dad about this the other day, and it does feel like the Hurricanes. Something he mentioned with like Kobe Bryant's like final deal, they treated him really well with that. Kind of as a thank you, for everything he did for the Lakers, and some of this, because again, we do feel like some compromises were definitely made on the Hurricanes end for this deal. Simply as a bit of a thank you. Maybe they were wanting to obviously again, probably less term, but like, hey, let's do this, and deal was made, and I think it's going to be a fine deal. I'm not too worried about it, because he plays such a big role defensively, and he is, what'd you say, 34 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's 34 years old, but he also takes really stinking good care of himself. Kind of like Brent Burns. Like, he's kind of up there in age, especially as a hockey player. But he also takes really good care of himself too. So, 34 on him, it may not be as bad as 34 on whoever else that doesn't take as good care of themselves. And he's shown like he still got stuff left in the tank too.
Well, and what better coach to help a player, take care of his body and manage his fitness and his conditioning and his health as he ages than Rod Brind'amour. And then,
Yeah,
you
and
factor in, you've got Bill Berniston, does a really good job as Hurricanes trainer. And you just mentioned Brent Burns, he's here, he's under contract for the next 2 years. So certainly there's things that I'm sure Stahl can learn from him in that regard.
Yep. 110%. And you also have a coach that played for a very, very long time. Not a guy, who played, for a few years and then, transitioned to coaching. No, he played for a really long time. He knows what it's like to play as an older guy too. And that can definitely be something that can help Stahl and Burns and so many of these other guys that are getting up there in age. That's going to be great for them there. But at the end of the day, we're not surprised that this deal got done by any stretch. We knew it would. We knew he was not going to leave, with the one exception being, does he, go, play with his brothers if a deal doesn't get done, but we knew it would at the end of the day. And I'm glad it got done, because that's our captain. He's been here for 11 years now. He's going to finish out his career here, and you love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, he's kind of become, he's never been a flashy scorer, but just with his two-way play and his leadership and everything else, as long as he's been here 11 years now, he's become one of the better forwards in franchise history, in team history, franchise history, just with everything that he's done. But I said this too, he's going to end up, if he plays, I think at least the first 2 years of this deal, playing more seasons as a Hurricane than Eric Staal did. Who could have ever imagined that, back in like the early or late 2000s, early 2010s, that would ever happen. And two, I think if he plays like 160 some games, basically a shade over 2 full seasons on this deal, Jordan Staal will actually be the Hurricanes' all-time team leader in games played.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, and
But
like
it's
that's
also really cool.
more than likely going to happen.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's gonna happen. And I do think, with this deal as well, obviously it'll be, years and years down the road, of course, but you got to figure, all right, he's going to play, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 seasons as a Hurricane, going from the dark days into, what we're in now. You got to figure, at number 11, that's going to go up in the rafters as well, at some point, down the road in the late 2020s. But man, it's going to be, it's really cool that it finally got done. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, I'm very happy to see this. I think this is the outcome that everybody wanted.
Yeah, 100% definitely what we're all wanting. And then now moving on to something that folks probably don't want to see, especially from what I'm seeing on social media, is the Hurricanes potentially trying to trade to reacquire Tony DeAngelo. We will talk about that trade and all the developments that have gone on with that over the weekend and today, from what Andrew was telling me before we started recording, right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, it's getting hot. So if you need your AC fixed, go to eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. The same goes when it comes for your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage and look for the green check to know that the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available for U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Now, this is going to be something that we're going to be talking about for a while, Andrew, because we both have a lot of thoughts on this. And it came out over the weekend that the Carolina Hurricanes were potentially going to trade for Tony DeAngelo from the Philadelphia Flyers, bringing him back uh, in a deal that really makes no sense. We're going to take all the off ice stuff off the table here. You know, just on the ice, this does not make sense of why they would want to do this. They are set on the right side. And you brought Brent Burns in to be that replacement on that top pairing after they traded him away. And eh, I he is also, he was pretty good offensively, but defensively, he's just a liability. And he's a traffic cone out there. And we've all seen the highlights of Sebastian Aho, destroying him defensively, and so many other players doing it as well. It just does not make sense of why they would want to do this. And you know, it came out, further, as more and more details came out over the weekend, that Philly was going to retain 50% of his, I believe it was 5 million cap hit. So, they would retain 2.5. And that's, the Hurricanes would do the other. But yeah, it just does not make sense of why they would want to do it. You you had mentioned, potentially, being the Goss spare replacement and, moving Chatfield over to the left on that third pairing. But man, like it just feels like it would be a step back on their defensive pairs if they were to do this.
Yeah, I'll talk about why I think the Hurricanes are looking at doing this and the similar reservations to you that I have. Obviously, I think the thought is Shane Gostisbehere is going to walk in free agency. He's going to be one of the top defensemen on the market. He's probably going to get upwards of $5 million a year. The Hurricanes obviously are not going to pay that for a guy in their third pair. And so they need, that third pairing guy who can move the puck, create offense, and quarterback a power play. And look, Tony DeAngelo is a really, really good power play quarterback. There's no question about that. You look at what he did the year before with the Hurricanes, 51 points overall, 10 goals, 20 power play points. Even in, what was considered a bad year for him in Philly last year, 11 goals, 42 points, 19 power play points. So I think the thing they're looking at is like, you put Brent Burns as the quarterback on one unit and Tony DeAngelo on the other. Yeah, that's probably going to give you two pretty good power play units. I'll agree with that. The issue again that comes in for me is Tony DeAngelo as a 5-on-5 defender is not good, not at all. Even with the Hurricanes, he was buoyed pretty well by playing next to Jacob Slavin, carrying him defensively. But even then, pretty clear he wasn't cutting it defensively. Last year with Philly, he had a horrible year in that regard. I know plus minus isn't everything, but Philly was a bad team overall, but he was a minus 27. I mean, there were some metrics I think that showed him as one of the worst defensive defensemen in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
So now you bring him here. Yes, you can shelter him some on the third pairing, but Chatfield isn't Slavin. I feel like asking one of them to play their offside all year isn't ideal because, as I said, we've got that logjam on the right side with Burns, Pesci, Chatfield. And yeah, we talked a lot about last year. And look, the third pairing was going to take a step back, I think, from Shane Gostisbehere because he's overqualified for a third pairing role.
Yeah.
A really good puck mover, better defensively than we thought. But I think last year, especially once you had him, you finally had it to the point where Rod Brind'amour could roll 3 deep pairings and rely on his third pairing more to do what he wanted and play well at both ends of the ice and not have to shelter them as much. And if you have Tony DeAngelo on your third pairing, you've got to do some serious sheltering at 5-on-5, especially once you get into the playoffs and you've got the matchup game. So I mean, like I said, there's pros and cons. The pro is obviously his offensive ability, his ability to quarterback that second power play unit and do it well. We saw it the first year he was here. The cons are, his defense. He's a defensive liability at 5-on-5. You wouldn't be playing him with Jacob Slavin. You'd be forcing him or Chatfield to play on their offside. You'd really have to shelter that third pair. And all things to the point last year in Philly where they were healthy scratching him down the stretch. There was, I think, a game where John Tortorella played 5 defensemen rather than playing Tony DeAngelo. So things totally bottomed out for him there. Like we said, the Hurricanes, if they get him, would get him at 50% retained. And there's some hangups to this trade that we'll talk about in the next segment. And they're basically giving up nothing. But I don't know. I mean, do you really want to, go out and get a guy who bottomed out with his previous team and they're basically looking to dump him? Yes, things worked out pretty well with him when he was here before. Obviously, there were no issues off the ice. Maybe, playing here for Rod Brind'amour is the best place for him. But just looking at the defensive limitations and, how poorly things went for him in Philadelphia, yeah, I have a hard time wrapping my head around this one, other than, again, his obvious power play ability.
Yeah, I agree there. And, there was, again, just the defensive liability. One thing when he was here that I kind of went back to a few times was I forget when it was in the season, but it was a game against Pittsburgh. He was supposed to be on Sidney Crosby, and he was not there. He was just on the other side of the rink Crosby just goes down to the net and scores, and just completely left his man all alone. And yeah, just such a defensive liability. And I think it was in the playoffs. I don't remember, but one thing that just rubbed me the wrong way too was like when he threw like his stick at a guy. And I think it was either towards the end of the season or the playoffs. Like he was just really frustrated or whatever. And like, what are you doing, dude? Like, no, like just a defensive liability. I just don't want to deal with that again. Like you said, we knew the third pairing was going to take a step back this coming season. We knew that, but I just I don't feel that this is the answer. And as you said, there's some potential hangups with this trade that could potentially make it not happen. And we will talk about that right after this quick break, folks. All right, folks, it's time to continue talking about this trade that could potentially either happen or not happen. Uh, Over the weekend, it was said that there were some hangups with it. And, now shortly before we started recording, Andrew elaborated a little bit more on those to me. So, Andrew, take it away on those.
Yeah, so this is interesting. It's from Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic. Um, the Hurricanes and Flyers basically had the agreement that the Hurricanes were going to send a low-level prospect. The Flyers would retain 50%, but the NHL took issue because DeAngelo would be going back to the Hurricanes within a year of them trading his RFA rights to the Flyers. And there's some stuff in the CBA about a player returning to his original team within a year, especially on a retained salary, potentially being salary cap circumvention. The Flyers and Hurricanes both argued with the league about it, said, the Hurricanes didn't sign his contract. The Flyers did last summer. And Chuck Fletcher, who is the GM who traded for DeAngelo and signed him, is gone. So how could it be circumvention? He said the league is going to talk to both teams at the draft in Nashville this week about it. And they'll either say, all right, you're right, it's not circumvention, you guys can go ahead and do it. Or they will ask them to wait until July 9th to make the trade following that 12 months rule, which if that's the case, who knows if the trade would still work for both teams by then, because that's over a week after free agency opens. So there's still some possibility that this doesn't happen because of all that.
Yep, it's going to be a very interesting thing to follow because it's pretty evident that the Flyers want to trade Tony DeAngelo to someone and just get him out of there. So that'll be interesting to watch. Like you said, it does. If they do have to wait to do it, it'll be interesting to see what the Hurricanes do in free agency, because they could be like, all right, we're going to have this trade happening, on the 9th, let's just not even worry about it. Let's spend, that money over here, and just not even, do anything, maybe potentially, uh, pass on someone who could be a better fit. I'm not sure, what the defenseman free agency market is looking like at this moment. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch to see what happens, who they could potentially get instead, or, do they just wait this, if they have to wait, just wait it out. Because that's also something that wouldn't necessarily surprise me if the league asks them to wait. They'll be like, fine, roll the eyes, whatever, just wait a few days on it, and then do it anyway, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like if both teams know they're going to do this and there's the agreement, I don't see why they wouldn't just wait, but other things can happen. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe Shane Gostisbehere goes to free agency and doesn't find what he likes and struggles back to the Hurricanes and says, hey, I'll stay. I don't see that happening because of everything I mentioned with his abilities and the lack of quality defensemen on the free agent market. I think he's going to get a good deal with somebody who's going to give him top 4 minutes. But, just for example, I mean, What is July 9th from now? Like
It
well
is
over like 2, almost 3 weeks. I mean,
Today is June 26th, so it is 1 week. Yeah, it's a little over, yeah, about 2 weeks.
that's a long time in the NHL offseason. A lot of different things could happen for that. I mean, the Hurricanes could make their trade for a forward or a scoring winger at the draft this week, and a different, potential third pairing defenseman, gets thrown in when they get into those negotiations and they say, okay, we're good. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I think if nothing else materializes and these teams know they wanted to make this trade anyway, there's no reason they wouldn't just wait and do it when the league says they can do it. But there's a lot of different things I think that could happen between now and then, and that's why, like LeBron pointed out, they wait that long. Who knows what's going to happen? Or the Flyers want to trade Tony DeAngelo. They may not want to take the risk that in 2 weeks the Hurricanes are still going to want to do this, and they may, try to retain salary like they were going to do and flip him to someone else that they'd be allowed to flip him to other than the Hurricanes.
Yep, I could totally see that happening as well because, like I said, it's pretty evident that they want to move on from him and get him out of Philly. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. Because as you were talking about, at with the draft the other day when we had Matt on the show, he's said that the Hurricanes could potentially trade out of their number 30 pick, trade that to whoever, and like you said, maybe pick up a third pairing defenseman in that trade. That could be something that the Hurricanes decide to do, shopping that pick around, and try to acquire a third pairing defenseman, for that pick, and along with whatever else they happen to get. So yeah, 2 weeks, that's a long time. I could definitely see this trade not happening. I think as the week progresses, especially when the draft Wednesday and Thursday, I think we'll really know more then, as far as like, all right, will this happen, will this not happen, because of, like you said, that meeting that the league is going to have with the Flyers and Hurricanes. I think we'll really know more as the week progresses.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. The league might say like, okay, fine, you guys are right. Go ahead and you're going to do it anyway. Go ahead and do it. I'd be surprised just because when you have a rule like that and you start making exceptions to the rule, that's a slippery slope to go down. So I'd be
Hmm.
surprised if the league was willing to do that.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I really, really don't. Even if it is, just like a few days shy of a year, I just don't see that happening because we know how the NHL can be. So I don't see that happening. I really, really don't. I think it's gonna be like, all right, you guys gotta wait till July 9th, whether there's no cap circumvention at all. You gotta wait. Because again, like you said, when you get into exceptions for rules, it becomes a slippery slope. I don't see it happen. I think if they're going to do this, they're going to have to wait until July 9th. So we'll see what happens with it. Whether the trade goes through, whether it doesn't, whatever may happen, we will talk about it here on Locked On Hurricanes, as well as any other contract extensions, free agent signings, trades, whatever. We'll be talking about it here. So make sure you're following the show on Twitter at LO_Hurricanes, myself on Twitter at Jared Ellis _96, and Andrew on Twitter at ASchnit53. And we will talk to you guys in the next episode. You guys have a great Monday and a great week this week. And as always, let's go Canes.